Hello, my name is Jason J. Rock Houston, and you're listening to Chaotic Riffs Magazine. We can be found on the web at www.chaoticriffs.com. And our special guest today is Shane Gaalaas from the band Diesel Machine. Welcome to the show today. Shane, how are you doing?
Hey, Jason. I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing great. Now, your publicist sent me a little press release on you guys, and I've, of course, have heard Diesel Machine before because your frontman is Patrick Lachman, who played in Damage Plan and Halford. So... But I was reading in the press release that this is the first album you guys have released in like 20 years. So I mean that's a great question to start off with. Why? What took 20 years to get a new album out?
Yeah, that is a good question. In a nutshell, basically, 20 years. It's been 20 years since we released Torture Test, and boy, so many things happened in that time. But as you know, there was four of us in the band, and right around that time, after we released that record, and then we went on tour, and we had a couple really successful runs, and it was looking like we were going to, just continue getting back to work with, the rest of what hopefully was going to come out of us, as a band, and it seemed like all of our lives sort of just changed.
Wow.
During that time, there was I got a gig in Japan, which turned out to be a really 17-year run for me. And then of course Patrick, he took off and he went out with Rob Halford.
Yeah, of course,
for a long time, and then. Unfortunately, our bass player was in a tragic motorcycle accident.
Oh, wow. I wasn't aware of it.
Rich Gonzalez. Yeah, and so he, he's doing great now.
That's great.
But at that time, he was taken out of commission, and so that threw a big wrench into everything. Wow. And we weren't sure how things were going to play out. And then our singer AJ also got a gig with Soil.
Okay.
And he left. So we just kind of all went our separate ways. And we had a bunch of things written at that time and little bits and pieces of things. But to answer your question, that's why it's taken so long.
That makes sense. Now,
all of us have kind of been on different paths, and we've come together, in increments, incrementally to continue, the writing for this record. Wow. We certainly didn't think it was going to be this long.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
We're all sort of, musicians and do sideman gigs, because you got to do a lot of things if you're going to be a musician in this day and age. You're ultimately going to wear a lot of hats, and you're going to do a lot of things. So. It just kind of took that long to get it finished. It's a lot of work making a record, and it's not like we could just take, 2 or 3 or 4 months out of our lives.
Of course, yeah, I see.
Devote it all to Diesel Machine, because that's what it ends up taking a long time to, make these records, right?
Yeah.
So, in answer to your question,
I think you did a fair shot of that.
Short one.
Now, let me ask you, what was the gig you had in Japan for all these years?
So I was playing with a band called BEEZ, spelled B''Z.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Or Z if you're in the UK or Canada. And it's a big a pop rock band based in Japan.
Wow,
so I kind of pseudo lived in Japan on and off for 17 years, back and forth. But that was kind of took me out of commission for a lot of the stuff in the Western world for me.
And another guy that, of course, is famous for doing that is Marty Friedman, who was in Megadeth for several years, and he's got a successful solo career now, and he's real big in Japan, and he's really immersed himself in the life as far as he lives there. He learned to speak the language. I mean, did you do any of that? Were you able to learn how to speak Japanese?
Marty is a freak because he, when you say he immersed himself, I mean, to simplify, he learned the language, years ago. He can write kanji, and it's not just well-versed. He speaks native Japanese.
Wow, that's amazing.
He's become a talk show host over there.
I heard that, that's almost like a pop icon over there.
He is, he really is. And so that's a whole nother level. I mean, I can get by with basic Japanese, but Marty he's like, he's the next level.
Wow, and let me ask,
Japanese.
And let me ask you, an American guy getting a gig like that all the way in Japan, how did they kind of were they aware of you?
Well, I think prior to me getting the gig with BEEZ, I kind of got the gig. The guitar player in BEEZ, Tak Matsumoto, was a big fan of Michael Schenker.
Oh, wow.
And BEEZ, rewind back to whatever it was, 97 or something, 98. I was playing with Michael Schenker at the House of Blues in Los Angeles.
What a gig to get there, too. Wow.
Yeah, and they happened to be in town recording a record. And they went out one night, and they went to, the House of Blues to see Michael, because Tak was a big fan. And I was on drums at that point in time. And then a few years later, they were looking for a new drummer, and they were doing auditions in LA anyway. My name came up, and they asked about me, who was a guy back in the day that was, playing with Michael. And so I ended up getting the audition and getting the gig.
Wow.
And that's how that sort of transpired. Excuse me.
And you mentioned Patrick Lachman, who's a singer now. But he was also
Patrick Lockman, actually.
Oh, Lockman. Thank you for correcting me there.
I'll just clarify for the
fans,
listeners.
For the fans. Yeah, thank you. Anyways, I know, like originally he was in Halford, you were saying, and he was originally your guitar player. Is that correct? And my question was, did you always know he was also a singer, or did you discover that later on?
Well, I knew because back in the day, I think I met Pat 96 when we started rehearsing and writing together and and also with his brother. But I knew Pat could sing because we would jam, Iron Maiden and Judas Priest, and he knew we grew up on all that stuff. So that's the stuff that we ultimately would jam on in rehearsal or before we got started writing or whatever. And he'd sing all that stuff. He'd kill it. Like he could, do Dickinson and Halford and you name it, Dio. So, I did know he was a singer.
And that's kind of interesting that you guys have had kind of this separate life for the last 20 years, but you've each kind of had a little bit of level of success on your own and come back to do this. I mean, obviously, Pat did the thing with Halford, and then, I imagine when he got the gig with Damage Fund, you just had to kind of be, wow, man, way to go.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were stoked for him when he told us that he was going to be doing that, because again, we were jamming a lot of Pantera in those days too.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that he would get a gig like that. And I say that because I will say one thing about Diesel Machine. I was listening to some of the songs off the new album, and first thing I got to tell you, Shane, that I really dig is when you're listening to a band for the first time, you're just getting into their music. You're trying to think, who do these guys sound like? And I will say in regards to just the heaviness of the music. There's just the heaviness alone sounds a bit like Pantera or maybe even Slayer. But you guys, I gotta say, you guys got definitely got original sound going. You really don't sound too much like any of those influences. I really think there's a certain heaviness that is there, but you really sound like you got your own sound, and it's amazing, especially coming back together after 20 years.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's it's a collective sort of smattering of different influences, but we all kind of bring a little bit of a different thing into it. But basically, Rich was the big Slayer guy.
Yeah.
So
there's that in there. Yeah.
I think that maybe, and I wasn't, in the beginning, I wasn't so hip to Slayer, but then I kind of, got into some of those speed grooves and things like that, the thrashy part of it. The thrashy element, I guess, probably came from Rich and the Slayer thing.
Yeah, I have appreciation for what Slayer does. Especially just reaching those high vocal notes. That's an art in itself. But even the screaming, kind of screeching vocals. But the heaviness of the music, like the drumming, like I would think that you would kind of just the videos I was watching on your Facebook page, you kind of have, like, to me, you come across as a real powerhouse of a drummer, real physical player.
Yeah, well, I think when I saw Slayer live, it sort of changed it for me.
Yeah.
It was post Lombardo, but I saw him here in town in LA here at the Gibson Amphitheater.
Wow.
And when I saw that live, it was like, okay, I get it now. So I think that's when it sort of infused. There's a little bit of that sort of infused in me at that point. But yeah, when you saw Slayer live, it was like, okay, it's a whole nother thing.
Again, I gotta be honest. Well, I've heard of the band Diesel Machine before. I'm just kind of getting into you guys' kind of music and kind of discovering. I thank the publicist for sending me that press release they sent and setting this up. But I gotta tell you, again, watching your videos on your Facebook page, Shane, I mean, you come across real powerhouse. Like, you're not just one of those drummers that just sit there. And just watching your videos, it's like, okay, the way that guy's playing, I want to go see him play in concert. I mean, that's just. And in talking about some of your influences, as far as drummers, who would you say are the guys that really influence what you're doing?
Boy, there's so many guys. I mean, starting out, initially it was, I'd say as far as an influence, there was sort of the inspirations.
You picking up the
really
sticks,
like the Peter Chris's from Kiss and stuff,
wow.
and then. But the influences for me were John Bonham, straight up. That was like the main guy for me. And then, Alex Van Halen.
Wow.
And then later on it was like, Dean Castronovo and Vinnie Pauls.
Oh, wow.
And then later I kind of went down a little bit of a fusion road, and I got into, went heavily into jazz, and I got into Vinnie Colaiuta and Dennis Chambers and all those dudes. But I've always had the rock sort of roots, so
that's kind of
the guys for me. Definitely it goes back to Bonham. I mean, even now, he's still the guy for me that brings the groove and the power and
and let's be honest. I mean, he was such a powerhouse drummer that when he died, I mean, Led Zeppelin, let's say, was smart enough that they that guy cannot be replaced. We're gonna call it a day now, But as much as the fans may have wanted them to carry on, I just think they were smart enough to realize there's really nobody that can take that guy's place, Dare let them try. But it's kind of interesting because I'm a huge Kiss fan. That I listen to your drumming, and I kind of would not think you would be a Peter Criss fan because I think he was a much better drummer like early on in his career. Like if you go back to even the first Kiss Alive album. You listen to something like God of Thunder or 100,000, that solo in 100,000 Years, or even like Strange Ways off Hotter Than Hell. I mean, I mean, his drumming then, that was before, the drugs kind of take effect on his playing. I mean, that's probably the reason he's not playing anymore, I understand, because from all these years of playing, he suffered from carpal tunnel.
Yeah, I'm not really sure about all that, but I certainly know that in those days, people love to bag on Chris and Peter Criss, I should say, and bag on everybody. But I mean, Peter was playing a lot of cool stuff, man. Like She and all those first three records.
I mean, those first three
grooves were kind of he had a sort of jazzy sort of thing, Well,
yeah, that's the interesting thing about Peter Criss is I'm not really bagging on the guy, but this is the thing. Like you just made the point. I've heard him in interviews even talk about the fact that he considers himself much more of a jazz drummer than a rock drummer. He kind of had to learn to play the rock style of music because he was playing jazz before he ever joined up with Kiss. Yeah,
it was kind of funky and jazzy. And you're right. It's funny. The first thing I ever really heard that really made that initial impression was 100,000 Years at my cousin's house.
Yeah.
The drum solo. My cousin's like, dude, you got to check this out. And, I was already into music at that point. I was, listening to Beatles and John Lennon and the 50s rock and roll stuff. But then I heard the drum solo in 100,000 Years, and I was like, whoa, there's flange going on, all these toms and stuff.
Yeah.
Or the phaser, I think it was a flanger, I forget. And then I look at the cover, and Gene Simmons and all the guys. And it really, that was like the impression, the first impression. And then I got to see them live. And then it was like, that's what I'm going to do. And that was like that first concert that really instilled in me, this is what I'm going to do. My parents were like, what?
Yeah.
You're 10. How do you know what you're going to do? But anyway, So, but Peter Criss, it all started. There's always some sort of impressionable something seed that happens when you're young, and that was the one.
Wow, and I got to ask you in regards to being a Kiss fan, or at least Peter Criss fan, how old were you at the time? The reason I ask is I was kind of curious, how much did the look and the music have on you becoming a fan? Because if you're a young kid and you see a picture of Kiss, you're like, man, they look like cartoon characters or superheroes. I mean, that has to play a role, Yeah.
You nailed it. Yeah, it's like, I was probably, I think I was 7.
Yeah, I could see that. Wow.
When I saw, I think it was 75 when Kiss Alive 1 came out.
There you go.
Well, I was around that age, 7 or 8. And, yeah, it was like the impression, right? It was like seeing it and the visual and hearing it. And, yeah, that there was that, these guys are my superheroes now.
Wow.
When I heard it and looked at it, it just sunk into some deep place.
Wow.
And then the music was great. Like, first 3 records are still classics, man.
I mean, especially those first 3 albums is very interesting because that was kind of before Destroyer. Destroyer is the one that kind of really the breakout album. But those first 3 albums, if you listen to them now, they're very different sounding, very raw sounding. I mean, it's just off the first album, like Firehouse, Black Diamond. That's another great Peter Criss tune, as far as his drum playing.
And singing.
Yeah. I often thought he was a better singer than a drummer. I mean, like you go back to, like you say, when you became a Kiss fan and you're hearing like God of Thunder, a solo on 100,000 Years on a live one. I mean, he was just a monster on the drums. But then Destroyer comes out and you hear him singing Beth, and it's like, oh man, that's different. But yeah, it's good.
What was the tune he sang on Rock and Roll Over?
Oh, okay, there's Hard Luck. Baby Driver. Yeah, Baby Driver. And Hard Luck Woman, which
Oh, that's right. He had 2 songs on there.
Yeah, which
he definitely sang their biggest hits. I think if you went back looked at their stats.
Yeah. He's
probably got the he sang on probably their biggest hits of all time.
Yeah. I mean, that's and the interesting thing I was reading the other day about Hard Luck Woman was Paul Stanley wrote that tune, but he originally wrote it for Rod Stewart because he thought it sounded like Maggie May, but then Gene Simmons, because they just had a hit with Beth, like you said, he said, you know what, let's have Peter sing that, and it became the hit that it became, Yeah.
Interesting.
And you also mentioned Dean Castronovo, and he's one of those powerhouse drummers too, and I urge you, if you're not aware of the Dead Daisies, check out what he's doing with them, because they have a new album that's supposed to come out this year, but I think it's been delayed till next year, but they now got Glenn Hughes as the singer, and John Corabi was in the band before that. They're a super great band.
I'm hip to them. Yeah. I mean, I was going to do a gig last week with Marco Mendoza.
Oh, wow.
A couple weeks ago, I should say, at the Big Potato, but unfortunately got canceled.
Yeah.
And he was in the band for, a long time. And Dean, Dean is a special drummer for me because, I totally got into him later on. It was like Neil Peart early when I started getting into the proggy stuff and then the Varney stuff. And, Dean was actually on a lot of those records. Yeah, and Dean actually got me my first gig with Yngwie.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. Wow.
So I owe a lot to Dean, actually. Yeah, I love that guy. He's not only an amazing drummer, but an amazing human.
So I wasn't aware you would think was that just for a few gigs, or was it for a certain period of time? Did you play?
Yngwie?
Yeah.
Yngwie?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I did the magnum opus sort of era. So it was like, I think around 2 years I did with him. But that was the first. I was living in L.A. I'm from Canada originally. Yeah. And came down here. And as you know, maybe you don't know, but it's tough for, foreign people to come into the States and work. I mean, there's the whole visa thing that we need to get.
Yeah.
Anyway, long story short, my visa was, I came down to Los Angeles to study at MI.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And after that, finished, I had a certain amount of time to stay here and work to, to some capacity, but it was going to expire.
Wow.
And I entered in one of those, it was like a drum-off competition.
Oh, wow.
And Dean Castronovo happened to be one of the judges on it.
Oh, wow.
But it just so happened it was right around the time where my visa was about to expire, and I was going to have to go back to Canada. So after the drum-off thing competition, I went up to Dean and I just told him, hey, man, I'm a big fan. And he told me to give him his number. I was like, what?
Yeah.
This is back in the day before there were cell phones.
Wow, yeah.
he said he was going to recommend me for some gigs. And I was just kind of like, oh, okay. I didn't really believe him, honestly. I thought he was just, it was LA talk.
Yeah.
But lo and behold, it was like 2 or 3 days later, I started getting a bunch of calls.
Oh, wow. How cool is that?
Was recommending me for a lot of stuff. And one of those calls happened to be Yngwie. So long story short, I got in Yngwie's band and recorded Magnum Opus.
Oh, wow.
Toured the world, and that was kind of my first, taste, kick at the whole international touring and playing in a band that's touring, all the time.
Yeah. What was your experience with
that was because of Dean.
Yeah, what was your experience like working with Yngwie? Did you get to know him well, or?
Yeah, I mean, my experience was pretty good, I was just so stoked to be out doing it.
Wow.
I'm not sure I could do it now.
Yeah, I hear you.
But I don't know that, I never really had any problems with Yngwie or anything. I mean, the reason it ended was he was going to take some time off.
Yeah.
And go do it was like the Prague Philharmonic record era that he did. But,
okay. That's very interesting. And now getting back to Diesel Machine, you guys have a new album that's set to be released really soon. I believe it's called Evolve. And
yes.
And I'm not sure if I forgot the release date there, but it's coming out in August, right?
Yeah, August 27th. And actually the single just released a couple of days ago.
It's called React, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that I've heard that track. It's pretty cool, real heavy kind of tune, and I think anybody into metal is going to definitely love it. Now, my question is, getting back to the album that's ready to be released, like 20 years, like you said, between albums. So is this stuff that was written throughout that 20 years, or did you start writing again when you recently regrouped?
It's a combination of
stuff.
A bunch of old riffs that we had.
Yeah.
Pardon me, I want to go back. I think I said the 27th, but it's actually the 21st.
Okay. A couple more weeks.
Is August 21st.
Okay.
Pardon me.
That's all right.
We had a bunch of riffs from back in the day that we'd written, and like I was mentioning before, in these increments where we would get together and write stuff and bounce stuff back and forth. There's some new riffs that came about, and I know Pat had some more riffs that he brought to the table a little bit later on. And then it was just a matter of, sort of fine-tuning everything and going back and forth with arrangements, and then that took a while. That took a long time. And then tracking all the stuff, then once we had like some solid arrangements, then I went in and started retracking all the drums, and then it was just the overdubbing sort of process, which took a little time too, because again, it was in between things. So it was a combination of old riffs that we sort of retweaked, and then new riffs that we sort of introduced as time went on.
Well, that's cool to me, because to me it doesn't matter if you wrote a tune 10 years ago or 1 year ago. If it's a good song, it's a good song, and it shouldn't matter when it was written or recorded. But were any of these tunes written with the original singer in mind, and any of those songs have to go through any changes, or?
I'm sorry, the original singer?
Well, because you said you originally had a different singer, right? When the band.
No.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood
Never
you.
had a different singer. AJ's always been the singer.
Okay, yeah, okay. I misunderstood.
Back in the day when I was jamming with Patrick in the sort of first incarnation of this band.
That's, I think, what I was talking
Patrick's brother was singing for a minute, but it went under a different name. It was called the 11th Hour.
That's what I was thinking about. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Now, the other question I had is, you mentioned your bass player, he was involved, I guess, in a serious car accident. It took him a while to recover, but I got it. Just that right there, as you talk about it, it says the real brotherhood you guys must feel for each other. Because you could have just easily said, we're not going to wait for this guy to, heal. And of course, if you had been in a similar situation, you'd hope they would have done you the same way. But that just speaks volumes about, the kinship you guys must have as a band.
Yeah, unfortunately, but also fortunately, Rich is in a wheelchair now.
Wow.
He unfortunately doesn't have the use of his legs, but he can still rock with the best of them.
Yeah.
And we wanted to finish this record for him ultimately because of the the struggle that he's been through, and he's come out now on the other side of all this stuff with a totally whole new look on life, a fresh look on everything. And it's a tribute to, like, when it says talk about the
brotherhood.
It's it really is an evolution for us to be able to just get through this life. I mean, look what we're going through now. So.
Yeah, I mean, the guy could have ended up getting killed.
Really awesome that after all this time, we could still, make music together and put it out. So yeah, it is an amazing thing.
And as crazy as this may sound for me to be asking, I got to ask: is he going to be performing with you guys like live? And the reason I asked that is, I don't know if you're aware of who Leslie West is. He's a legendary guitar player from Mountain, and he lost one of his legs, and he's in a wheelchair now, but yet he still gets up and plays the guitar on stage and stuff, when they were still performing live, of course, but so
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Rich is definitely going to be on stage with us rocking.
That's cool.
It doesn't matter if he's
I mean that just goes to, again, to show the brotherhood the band has, and that rock and roll spirit. I mean, some guys wouldn't be able to do it, but thank God that he's willing to give it a shot, and you guys are they're right by his side, to do it together.
Yeah, it doesn't really affect him at all. I mean, he's done a lot of gigs since all that went down.
Yeah, and of course everybody's heard the story of Rick Allen.
It's a little bit awkward for him, but he's figured out ways to get around that.
Yeah. I mean, who would have ever thought? I mean, we all know the story of Rick Allen, the one-armed drummer. I mean, look what he's done.
Sure.
And even musical technology, because of guys like that, what they've been able to do with the drums and electronic kits is just amazing. Yeah. Now we're
going to get him to do some tricks on stage that might bring a whole nother element to the whole live show.
Yeah. Wow. That sounds exciting. I'm excited to see that. And as far as performing live, of course, COVID-19, that's affecting everybody. I mean, have you guys given any thought to how that's going to affect you? Or are you hoping to get back to play maybe next year?
Yeah, that, like you say, it's really thrown a wrench into all all our plans to go out and play. There was a bunch of scenarios that were tossing around before all this went down, but now I don't know. I hope we're out playing next year.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't look good for this year.
Yeah.
But hopefully next year everything is hopefully going to be back to some semblance of
normalcy, right? Yeah. I mean, I've seen some bands where they've been doing stuff like online, where maybe we're going to have a backyard concert, so we're going to perform from our studio. We're going to have a Q&A session. Have you guys given any thought to doing stuff like that?
Yeah. Actually, we have, and that's a great idea.
Yeah.
If we can get that to happen, that's kind of like the thing you do. That's kind of the only thing you can do.
Yeah,
like,
well,
now.
If we can't do this, we'll do this, or we'll give this at least a shot and see if we can do it. Yeah.
Do the COVID-y kind of video things, but it'd be nice to actually get in a room and play, or in a backyard, socially distanced environment. And do this. And
did any of that affect the recording of the album? I mean, did you have most of it recorded before this COVID-19 kind of took over the world, or did it?
Yeah,
that's good.
I think we did have most of it completed by then. It was just the logistics of finding the right label to give it the right home. But everything was kind of already in place at that point. It was just, it took a little. Maybe more time, with this, just to get the label on board, because of, for obvious reasons, with all this stuff going on.
And can you talk about who you guys are signed with right now, or who's the label you're working with?
Metalville.
Oh, that's cool. And a very, very European label, is that true?
Yeah, I believe they're based out of Germany.
Oh, that's kind of interesting.
They seem to be really on board with what we're doing, so we're stoked to. Now, to have a place, that's going to distribute the music. And
Now, did you?
It's tricky now with social media and stuff. It's not like the old days.
Yeah, you're lucky if you even have a record label. It's like, what's a record deal,
Having a distribution is key. Still in this weird age.
It's funny, you guys aren't alone though there, because a lot of even the more established bands from the '80s. A lot of them are getting signed like record deals through like European labels, and I think a big part of that is I don't know why it is, but for some reason the European rock fans, they have more of a, even the metal fans are more hardcore and more more appreciative of the rock groups they support, and a lot of times here in America, I don't know why that is, but that's just the case.
Well, yeah, it's just a different culture now. I mean, rap and hip hop R&B has sort of taken over everything here, and there's not so much of a rock scene here anymore. So it's still thriving in Europe.
Yeah, thank God. Thank God for that. I mean, and as far as the new album, Shane, I was curious. Like, did you go to this label Metalville, or did they approach you? How did you guys hook up?
I think we just kind of, sent it to a lot of different, labels.
And they finally responded.
and then we, basically would, we heard back from different labels and different scenarios. This one sort of made like the most sense.
That's cool. That's cool. I like that. And now, the recording, what was that process like? I mean, were you all in a room together, or did you kind of do it the modern way? You kind of record your parts separately and then piece it all together?
Yeah, I think part of it was, we had a few tracks where I recorded live with the bass player. So I have a recording studio.
Okay.
So I was able to sort of do all the recording here.
Wow.
Most of all the recording was done here, aside from some of the guitars, which were recorded at Patrick's house, and most of the vocals, I think, actually were done at AJ's house. But the meat of it was recorded here, bass and drums. I think some of it was live, off the floor, bass and drums.
Wow.
And then some of it was just overdubbed, but I think all the bass was done here.
Yeah. So being that you have a recording studio, I'm assuming you're very much involved with the production of the album, huh?
Yeah. I didn't mix it this time, only because I just want to get fresh ears on it.
Yeah. And
so Chris Collier, we sort of handed him the reins to take over from that. But yeah, when you're overdubbing all the time and dealing with the music, sometimes I don't know, it's just nice to have fresh ears step in, and Chris is a great mix engineer, so.
Okay.
And I was just like, yeah, you mix it, dude, because.
You're the guy. You're the guy for that, yeah.
Yeah, mix and master, so.
Wow, and when you guys were sending this stuff out, like you said, I've heard the name Diesel Machine, and I wasn't quite aware of it. It was 20 years ago since your last release, but I remember like when Pat was in Halford hearing about this band Diesel Machine that he was also in, and so that's kind of how you guys came on my radar as far as hearing about you. But when you were sending like the music out to different labels, were any of these labels aware that you guys have been around for 20 years, or and even think you were a new band or what?
That's a good question. I don't really know, but I would imagine a lot of them didn't know who the hell we were, because, like you say, it was 20 years ago. So
because what's very interesting, while I've heard of it,
they weren't around.
Yeah, well, I've heard the name Diesel Machine out there as far as being a fan of metal music and stuff. It seems like even the album hasn't been released, but there's so much press going around about this new album you guys are about ready to release, and it hasn't even come out yet, So I think that's
well, it's funny because we released a single
just
last year.
Yeah.
And we thought that it was, all this was kind of going to happen last year, but, for
things
whatever reason, it didn't. So it's been kind of like this slow build-up to actually having a legit release.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Well,
and, in this fickle world that we live in, I don't know anymore it seems like things don't take nearly as long as before. Back in the day, it was like you start promoting a record 4 months before the release.
Oh yeah, I mean back in the day, Shane, people, they were releasing new music just so they'd have a reason to go out on the road. Back in the day, you didn't go on the road unless you had new music to support, and these days it's kind of flipped. A lot of bands are just kind of living off their catalog of music, and we're not going to make any new music because nobody's buying CDs. So that's why, even though it's been 20 years in the making, I dig bands that continue to put new music out there because, that's what I want. Because as great as it is to go see my old favorite nostalgia acts, I also love to hear new music, every now and then.
Yeah. Or the other scenario now is just to release a single or an EP, 3 or 4 songs, which is cool too. We talked about doing that, but since we'd already, with all the work, we have the record ready to go. I mean, that'll be the next thing probably to do a single or something. Yeah. But let's just get this one collectively together, mixed, get it out there to the world, and then, then we'll...
Yeah. I mean, I do think if you would release like a 3 or 4 song EP, people would, as much as people might have loved it, come on, you guys haven't released that thing in 20 years. Come on, what are you waiting on? Right. So I think you're doing it the smart way, And I just got to say, Shane, it seems like, I was reading a bunch of stuff in preparation for this interview today, and it seems like you're kind of a spokesperson for a band. Is that kind of just fall on you? Is that something you volunteered to do? Or are you just the guy who likes to do most of the talking? Because I'll tell you, you do a great interview. You've been doing a great interview today.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah. No, honestly, I think, it's just whoever can do it at the time.
Yeah.
Anybody in this band is...
Well, I mean, I make the point because a lot of times, even most bands you see, usually they send out the front man or a guitar player. A lot of drummers kind of stay in the back, but I dig it. Like I said, watching your videos, you seem like a real powerhouse guy, and you give it your all. And I think especially as a drummer, that's what you need to really make yourself stand out.
Oh, thanks, Jason. I don't know. It just, it just sort of, for whatever reasons, it just sort of fell into my lap today. And
well, that's cool. That's cool.
Everyone's down to,
Well, the reason I asked, the reason I make that point is, like I said, a lot of times, even in the most famous of bands, you'll have 1 or 2 guys that go and do all the talking or all the interviews, or whoever found the band. I do all the interviews. It's my band. If you go and do an interview, I'm going to tell you what to say. So I think it's cool when you got a band like that where you said, well, everybody can go out and talk and do this or whatever. But in regards to the drum competition you were telling me you took part in, was that a Carmine a Piece event? Because I know years ago in Los Angeles, he was the first one that created one of those events.
That's right. I kind of remember something about that. No, you know what? This one was it was like the Guitar Center drum off.
Okay.
And I want to say it was like the second maybe year.
Okay.
Ever. Now they've become very popular, but back in those days, it was maybe like the second or third year, I think, of its running or something like that. But I remember Carmine's drum event. I don't remember when that was. Was it the 90s?
It was early 90s. And I brought it up because I had the privilege of interviewing him once, and he was telling me, Carmine, too, you can't help but watch him. I mean, no matter what bands he's in, he's like, everybody's watching the way he's playing. I mean, and he was telling me that he created that original drum off, and he's saying, but the whole thing with me and playing the drums, he says, I don't want to be in you're backstage. I want people to pay attention to me. I want to play like I'm playing in the front of a stage, make the audience watch what I'm doing, which is kind of an interesting way of doing it. But he's another just real powerhouse guy.
Well, Carmine's a legend, man. He's like, he's up there with John Bonham, the Ginger Baker of the Bakers of the rock world. He's, Vanilla Fudge back in 1967. I had the live record, growing up. And Carmine was incredible what he was playing in those days.
Yeah.
I had the pleasure of, I've met him a few times over the years, but when I was back in the Yngwie era, we were recording with Chris Tangarides, the producer.
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry, I have another call.
That's all right.
We were recording in Criteria Studios in Miami.
Wow.
And Carmine had some record that Yngwie was going to play on, and Carmine came in, and he was such a cool guy. I remember back in those days, I had met a bunch of rock stars at that point, and Carmine was kind of a hero. He was definitely one of my heroes. So when he just waltzed into the studio, and I was just like awestruck. Oh my God, it's Carmine a Piece.
Yeah.
And he just, he was playing with Yngwie on his record, but he was such a cool dude.
Yeah.
And then I had met him I played on a couple different records with him too, and he's just he's a great dude.
You know, that's
legendary drummer for sure. He's still great. I just saw something recently on Drumeo with him.
Okay.
And you know, he's still, and actually I had his book Realistic Rock back in the day.
Wow. But, he's an author and everything. I mean,
on a drum tangent here.
I love him and his brother Vinny, who played with Black Sabbath and Dio, and I mean, when they get together, it's funny because they're both powerhouse drummers, but and they got that band, the Drum Wars and a Piece, but it's funny because they got such great sense of humor. Like Carmine's like, no, it's a Piece, and he's like, no, it's Apathy. They don't even know how to pronounce the name, but yeah. And
I've never actually. What is it actually? Because I've never known.
I think it's a Piece, but they just.
Yeah, I think I say a Piece.
That's a joke, I guess, among the brothers, but it was really great getting to know you, Shane. And the last thing I want to ask you before we wrap this up is the single is React. Have you guys given any thought to like a music video for that or a lyric video?
Yeah, we have, and hopefully something is going to happen with that soon. Looking into that now, at least if nothing else, a lyric video or something, or maybe a COVID style, you know, 4 dudes in a box style video or something. Okay.
And I realize a lot of people listening to this don't even know what a record is, or let alone a record deal as we were talking about, or a record store. But is there an album in your collection, or even a CD, Shane, that you could kind of point to and say that's the band, or that's the guy that or album that played a big role in what I'm doing?
Yes.
What album?
Led Zeppelin, Physical Graffiti.
Oh, okay.
That'd be one I would say.
Okay.
That one made a big impact on me,
Again, John Bonham, I guess he was the man for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Shane Gaalaas, I want to thank you for doing the interview today. It's been real great talking to you. Let's keep in touch, and once the album comes out, and maybe in a couple of months, we can do a follow-up interview. It was great talking and getting to know you. So anytime you want to do this, just reach out to me, and I'd be happy to help you support what you have going on. So